So in the last month or so, I built myself a couple of Partscasters, and it's not really something I ever thought that I would be into. I would kind of see pictures, especially on like the Telecaster and maybe the Stratocaster forums of, middle-aged guys building their Partscasters. And I always thought it was not the best idea because they always tended to look a little bit oddball and even maybe not great to play, perhaps. But that could just be attributed to some guy's inability to set them up properly. Sometimes the action would look really high or the fret ends were obviously sticking out even in medium quality images on those forums. But then I sort of came to the realization that every time I would buy a guitar, no matter how cheap or expensive, I tend to always end up modding certain parts of it just to my preferences anyway. So to that end, it kind of, for someone like me who loves to mess with gear and mod guitars, it's almost a better value proposition to just build a Partscaster, provided you can do it right. So it sort of snowballed because I had a Squier 40th anniversary Strat that I bought, and it was a pretty decent guitar, but I really didn't like the neck on it. It kind of had like that roasted maple feeling to it, even though it just had a vintage tint to it. It felt really lightweight, too lightweight even, so it didn't really resonate in the way that I find that a good neck does. So I ended up, the first thing I bought was a Player Strat neck for that Squier Strat. So I had this reverse headstock Pal Ferro neck on that for a while, and then I ended up changing the pickups in that guitar. I bought a Damasio Cruiser for the neck, and then I kind of was just thinking like, I'm going to end up modding every single part of this guitar. Why don't I just sell the guitar in its stock form and build a Partscaster? And then I really got bitten by the bug and it sort of got a little bit out of hand. But we will have a quick look at the costs anyway. And I guess it's worth saying that in terms of a value proposition, in conclusion, no, I don't think that Partscasters are worth it if you're looking to resell them. But, value is in the eye of the beholder. And it can be a pretty fun project. And on the plus side, you get something that is at least aesthetically unique and maybe even sonically as well. So here's how the Strat ended up. The body I got from a guy on eBay who just seems to build guitar bodies, and he does a really good job. So it's a 50s style alto body. It already had the trem claw screws, and I think it came with the claw, this one. And it's like a relic or lightly reliced body, so it has that nice patina thing going on. Really happy with the quality of the body. I got two bodies, a Tele and a Strat, for £600 total, so 300 each. Not cheap, but I think there are certain parts you do and don't want to cheap out on when you're doing a Partscaster. That's obviously individual preference. So I kind of spent pretty big on the neck and body and the tuners, and maybe, proportionally less on the pickups and the bridge or the trem. So taking a look at the total costs, $300 for the body, $250 for the neck, $69 for the tuners. They're the locking tuners, and the first time around, because it's a reverse headstock, I accidentally bought right-handed locking tuners. You actually need left-handed locking tuners for a right-handed reverse headstock neck, confusingly enough, but valuable lesson learnt. Pickups was £78. I did buy proper CTS pots, so 3 of those came to about £20. Oak Grigsby, I think it's like the Mexican OEM, Mexican Strat OEM, or Fender OEM. Switch was £12. Bridge, I think, was a second-hand Wilkinson Strat bridge on eBay. That was about £35. The body did come with the output jack plate. Strap buttons were about £4. String tree, I think, £2. The pick guard was included with the body, as were the screws. I already had the wire and the control knobs, I think, so I've just assigned like a small value to those. And the neck plate was about £5. I did get kind of like a fake Chinese Fender branded one, which was cool. One thing important to note is that when you buy like a Fender neck online, the nut slot, it will be slotted but it won't be filed down. So as soon as you chuck strings on it, the action is really high, close to the nut. So you do have to file that down kind of carefully. But there's quite a few decent YouTube videos on how to do that. And this has come out quite well. I'm really happy with the setup that I did on it. There's still a couple of subtle tweaks here and there, but it plays really nicely. And I think it's important, just, don't go overboard with filing down the nut. Just do it a little bit, test it out, see how it is, re-intonate if you need to. And because if it's too high, you're going to be pulling those first fret notes right out of tune if you're fretting any of them. Another mistake that I made was didn't drill a big enough guide hole for the string tree and ended up snapping off the Chinesium screw in the hole. And so I've wood filled that and then redone it. So it is what it is there. Total cost of the Strat, £781. It's going to be roughly equivalent in US dollars if you bought the same parts in the USA, I would say. Comparing that, you can get a Mexican Strat brand new for below £600, as low as $529. So in terms of the value proposition, much better off getting a Mexican Strat. It'll have that kind of Fender feeling to it. It'll hold its resale value well. You'll get a gig bag with it, a Fender branded one. The one I bought was just a cheapo Amazon one. It's pretty nice, but it was only about £20. So I think part of the motivation for this as well is that if you've been playing guitar for a number of years, maybe 10, 20 years, similar to me, maybe you're not the best guitarist, but you still have a feel for a higher quality instrument. It seems like a bit of an uphill battle to get a nice guitar, particularly with inflation. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago you had a USA Strat and now you're paying twice as much in certain places to get one of those. It can be a bit disappointing. Added to that, you will look for reviews of guitars online and YouTube and stuff, and there'll be tons of people saying this Squier Classic Vibe Strat is the best guitar I've ever played, blah, blah, blah. A lot of these reviews are from guys who maybe started playing guitar during COVID lockdown and such. And although those guitars are good and they're great value for money, they're still not as good as guitars you might have owned in the past and paid a similar amount of money for. So I think that's what catches people out, particularly like me, who are always looking for a good guitar for a reasonable amount of money. You might get not conned, but you might get sort of tricked into buying a Squier guitar that is good. It's fine. You can gig it. It'll stay in tune pretty well. I've got videos of them on the channel, but it won't feel that good to play. The pickups might not sound so good. It's just not going to be inspiring. You're not going to look at it on the wall and want to play it as much as something, say, a USA or at least a made in Mexico Strat. Overall, I would say the pros of Partscasters in general are that you can spec all the parts exactly how you want them, so that instead of having to buy and mod a Player Strat or a USA professional Strat, you can just spec it how you want. You're not going to overpay for anything you don't want. Maybe you don't need the hard case of the USA Strat, or maybe you don't like the pickups in either the Mexican Player or the professional Strat or the Performer Strat. Maybe you don't like the oversized headstock on those. So on that side of things, I'm quite happy with my Partscaster Strat. It's really nice having the locking tuners. The reverse headstock is cool and unique, although I don't think it makes really any difference to the feel, like some people will say. It just makes it a bit harder to tune because you're reaching under here rather than on top, so you can't really see which string you're tuning a lot of the time, but maybe I will get a little bit more proficient in that. The pickups, really happy with these. They're the Tone Rider Pure Vintage set, and the in-between positions sound great. Normally I don't like those positions on Strats. However, these ones, for some reason, it just sounds really cool, and it's reversed wound middle pickup or whatever, so you get the hum cancelling in the in-between positions. I've got them set real low at the moment, and they sound excellent. Really remind me of the Fender Pure Vintage 54 pickups that I think are discontinued, but you can find them online for a lot of money. Certainly recommend saving money on the pickups and maybe overspending on the neck proportionally to the rest of the cost of the parts and the pots. The body also seems to make a difference to me as well, but totally subjective, I know. The Wilkinson trem, it doesn't look great to me. It's got black screws in for the intonation, and the metal, the kind of chrome look doesn't look as good as any of the Fender bridges. And I don't like, it's got the hex set screw, so you can never tighten up the trem arm properly like you can when you gunk up a Fender trem with some gaffer tape. I also prefer the 2-screw bridge like in a Mexican Strat, but I don't really mind the 6-screw that this one has. Maybe it transfers more vibration, perhaps. Yeah, moving on to the Tele. I think the Tele came out better than the Strat. Originally, I was going for like a 52 Tele, but with super hot, high output pickups, just to kind of do like a sleeper, djenty guitar. Thought that would be cool, and it was nice, but I prefer more normal pickups just so you can get some decent cleans out of them. This is the 50s classic player neck. It's got way too much lacquer on it, but that can be easily fixed by just a little bit of light sanding. It does have a nice profile to it. 21 frets, kind of looks vintage accurate. It's got the Goto vintage tuners on there. Pretty small fret wire. I think it's a 9.5 inch radius, but vintage size frets, I believe. Pretty cool relic job on the body, real light, but with the pick guard, I spoke to the guy who built the body and he's done a really great job. The only thing is, it's a Bakelite pick guard, and then they put lacquer on it, and then he's reliced the lacquer. The problem is that I think it's quite difficult to properly relic that lacquer. If you look at pictures of like a custom shop or a vintage 52 Tele, where it's worn through, it looks kind of like melted wax, whereas this has kind of you can pick it off, so it has a rough edge. It's just one minor detail that maybe isn't quite as nice on the relic job here, but I'm still really happy with it. Got another Oak Grigsby switch, which is great. CTS pots. I went with a dual 500K, 250K pot for the volume, which is working really nice. So it means that the neck humbucker sees the 500K and the bridge sees the 250. Otherwise, the transition, it's either too dark in the neck or too bright in the bridge if you just try to use a single value pot. I've messed with it tons in the past, and I'm really happy with this particular Tele arrangement. It's like a 10K broadcaster pickup in the bridge, so it's pretty high output, so it balances well with a kind of PAF style humbucker. 250K tone pot doesn't make as much difference to the brightness of the pickups anyway, so that's fine for me. I think this is a fake like relic Fender bridge, but it looks really good. Total cost for the Tele, £919, so you could get an American Performance Strat for that easy, I would say. 300 for the body, 300 for the neck, 67 total for the pickups. The neck was only about £18. I think that was a Tone Rider or some sort of small brand on eBay. And about 48 for the bridge. Goto relic neck plate was £11, £12 for the switch, £12 for the Goto relic knobs. Expensive knobs, but they look nice, feel nice. Kind of dome top Tele knobs. £5 for the strings, £4 for the strap buttons. I did buy a fancy case for this, which was about £100. It's a nice kind of peach colored Fender hard case, which is really cool. But yeah, obviously you don't have to overspend on the case, but it does look very nice on the inside. So just to summarize the pros and cons, I would say you can get something unique sonically and aesthetically from doing a Partscaster. You might save a bit of money compared to the equivalent product if you're smart about it and you find parts used. And you can choose everything about the guitar rather than having to buy something just to mod it and then maybe devalue it in doing so. Cons, it might not go smoothly. You might end up ruining certain screws like I did. It doesn't have the kind of official Fender feeling to it. And the resale value is probably a bit lower than just buying a guitar from a shop and then reselling that if you don't like it anymore in a year or so. So yeah, overall, pretty happy with the Partscasters. They're not great value to some, but to me, they're guitars that I enjoy playing, and I'm happy with how they turned out. Recommend taking a look at John Nathan Cordy's video on Partscasters that he put out about a month ago. Sort of echoes a lot of what I'm saying here, but he has a kind of unique take on it. And yeah, thanks for watching. Any questions, let me know in the comments and I'll get straight back to you.